ancient fruit of the date has always conjured within me imagery and feelings of decadence, ritual, ancient magic. You know, they say it is probably the most ancient cultivated tree in the world, that humans have been devouring this dark, sweet fruit for over 6,000 years. They used to pollinate the date palms by hand. I've been served dates in locals' homes in my travels through Iran, Morocco, Dubai, Turkey, but this recipe is one that I remember cooking as a child when I was about 7 or 8 years old. If you're not fond of dates, you may still love this cake as it's surprisingly light, with a deeply spiced flavor, notes of caramel, and the gentle warmth of ginger. I begin by roughly chopping the dates and removing the pits. It's not custom, but I like to add fresh ginger to my recipe. I add the chopped ginger and some baking soda to a dish of the chopped dates, and then pour boiling water over them, enough so that they are covered. What's your week been like? Here in Italy, we've just been watching the horrific news from Ukraine every day. I was also glued to the news in Australia because the area my parents live in had the worst flood in history this week. People were forced to climb onto their roofs and just wait with no electricity, no phone signal, and rising water. And the rescue boats couldn't even get in to save some people. It was quite terrifying having no communication for days and not knowing if my parents were okay. I even filed a missing persons report, but fortunately they're now safe. Tragically, some Australians lost their lives though, others lost their whole homes, so we were very, very fortunate. We leave them to rest for a half hour or so. As always, I'll be beating my butter by hand, so I'm leaving it on the stove to soften a little. Meanwhile, we can prepare the baking pan. Isn't this so beautiful? It belonged to my husband's Swedish grandmother. I suspect she only used it as a decoration on the wall, but the patterns are so intricate I thought they would make lovely crevices for the toffee sauce to drizzle down. If you use a normal cake pan, you could just line it with baking paper rather than the cold butter I'm greasing it with now. This goes into the fridge to firm up the butter. Now I want to cream my butter and sugar. If you have beaters, you could use them, but if you're doing it by hand, start with a wooden spoon to amalgamate the butter and sugar, and then you could switch to a whisk once it's easier and softer to whip. I add 1 egg at a time, beating well after each one. Now some vanilla bean paste. I can't help but add citrus scent to all of my cakes. I want orange zest to lift the flavour a little. And now I sift flour into the batter, some baking powder to help it rise, and some spices. Today I'm using cinnamon and a little nutmeg. Let's check on the dates. Now, sometimes when I make this, it's sufficient to just let the dates soften in the hot water, and after an hour or so, they can be mashed with a fork. However, if your dates are a little tough, like mine are here, then I like to gently blend them. Not smooth, still leave a little texture. I also find it distributes the dates better. So if someone doesn't like dates, this way they're almost imperceptible. You don't even know it's a date pudding. One friend at a dinner party the other night asked me if it was a marbled spice, sponge and chocolate cake. She couldn't discern precisely what the flavour was. As I'm sure you know with cakes, you want to avoid overmixing the batter at this stage, so just lightly fold the flour and the dates into the mixture. Now pour the batter into the pan, and this will cook for about 30 to 40 minutes in a preheated oven. The recipe, as always, will be on my site, kalifavel.com. Now for the sauce. We just put butter, brown sugar and cream into a pan and heat it on a medium heat, stirring occasionally. I recommend this recipe to friends who don't feel confident in the kitchen or want to throw a dinner party or cook for a lover, because unlike most cakes or tarts that run the risk of being too dry, too crumbly, overcooked, or simply of poor texture, this cake or pudding gives you a second chance after it's come out of the oven. It's drizzled in thick butterscotch sauce that will deceive even the culinary connoisseur into believing your dessert is an utter success. The pudding is fragrant and warm from the oven. If you feel you overcooked it or you're worried it will be too dry, you can prick the bottom with a skewer and pour on some of the caramel now before you eat your main meal with your guests, so it infuses the whole cake. Before I started making this cake this morning, I made a slow-cooked ragu to serve with pappardelle for our lunch. This one I just left to simmer for a couple of hours with mincemeat, red wine and tomatoes from our garden. But you can find my regular recipe where I leave it to cook much longer on this channel. I'll link it up above. Don't go buying some modern double choc cookie crunch swirl ice cream. I would recommend going classic with vanilla ice cream to cut through the sweetness and counter the dark depths with creamy purity. Keep it elegant and ivory, as the date pudding will bring all the drama. Did you enjoy that? If you did like it, you might consider giving this video a little like. It really does help my work to be seen by more people. If you want to go even further and subscribe to my channel, that would be incredible, and then you'll get a notification to know what time of the day I'm going to publish. The biggest thank you goes to the people watching this who support me on Patreon. I truly don't take it for granted. I wake up every week and think, oh, I'm so glad I can make what you guys tell me you want to see, not just following trends or some sponsor or integrating some product and trying to sell to you. I'm just making what inspires me, what inspires you, and so that's such a privilege. So thank you to those people who make that possible. I wish you all a beautiful weekend, and I'll see you next Friday. Alla prossima.